Right, hey guys, how we doing? Back another video from Totally Not Mark, and today we are checking out his review of Part 2, Battle Tendency. I really enjoyed his Part 1. I didn't agree with everything he said, but then that's personal preference, isn't it? There's always a bit of a personal opinion thrown in with these reviews. Part 2, I feel like that's where we get a more interesting character. Wouldn't you agree?
What?
We get a more interesting character with Part 2.
What? What happened? We talking about here?
She's too busy playing Bloodborne in the background.
Yeah, I'm thinking of dinner.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yes.
Part 2.
Yes.
More interesting main character.
Yes.
Yes, that's all I asked.
Yes.
Right, okay.
I agree.
So let's get into the review, shall we? Jesus Christ. Oh, I love the intro to Part 2.
Part 2 Battle Tendency is a complete and total roller coaster that is 25% longer, 50% more naked,
Whoa.
and 100% weirder than Phantom Blood. But did I think it was any better? You see, Battle Tendency, which largely focuses on the story of Jonathan Joestar's grandson Joseph, is the final part I'm vaguely familiar with. In the same vein as the prior
I'm really
part,
intrigued to see his Part 3 and onwards reviews.
were foggy to say the least, with really the only things I remembered being the Pillar Men,
Yes.
a minecart, and my personal favourite JoJo so far, Joseph Joestar, as
Well, yeah,
he
it's
uses
out with the
Indiana
two,
Jones,
he is more
Hamlet,
interesting,
and Sherlock
yeah.
Holmes' powers to beat the living daylights out of Nazis and magical naked monster men. So, just a typical day in the office for a Rocky.
Yes.
Speaking of which, once again I'll be reading the manga for the purposes of this review so as to get as close as possible to the original author's vision. And so, without further ado, I'm Totally Not Mark, and this is my review for the ambitious, hilarious, and ridiculous Battle Tendency.
It is ridiculous. Oh my god, the chariot fight. Fucking boss, I love this intro. JoJo. Battle Tendency recap.
50 years after the events of Phantom Blood, the grandson of Jonathan Joestar, Joseph,
Love it.
now living in New York City, USA, has to travel to Mexico and Europe to overcome the forces of the Pillar Men, a
Yes.
new, more powerful force of evil that makes the vampires from the previous part look like cockroaches by comparison. After defeating the first of 4 Pillar Men in Mexico through clever tactics, Joseph soon realizes that he must train to hone his abilities with his new best friend forever.
But the
Caesar,
Pillar Men are
grandson
noticed
Will
because of
Antonio Zeppeli. Together they hunt down an
streaks
individual called Lisa and undergo some
who tried to do
training.
the mask
However, before
thing
his training is completed,
and then become a
JoJo
vampire.
is attacked by a Pillar Man going by the name of ACDC, who despite being from
trying.
Mexico, is eventually overcome by JoJo's new abilities. Forces lead the JoJo gang to Switzerland, where his companion dies tragically, leaving JoJo
Caesar!
to take on the remaining forces of Wham and Cars, the 2 remaining Pillar Men. Oh, the humanity!
Whammo.
So, this video was a little harder to make. You know the way that Phantom Blood was pretty simple in terms of its
Yeah,
story?
it's quite linear.
2 boys grow up together,
This one goes
good,
all over
one
the
bad,
freaking
and
show.
somewhere in there, the bad guy puts on a demon vampire zombie mask to make himself an immortal lord of the underworld,
Yeah.
while the good guy does some breathing karate to stop him. You know, like I said, a simple story. Well, this one is a lot more complicated. You got the grandson of Jonathan, the Joseph Joestar character, living with his grandma Irina and good friends with Speedwagon, who is also an oil tycoon that goes to Mexico to see a large naked man in a stone pillar, but gets captured by the Nazis who want to do experiments on the naked Pillar Man. And once Joseph finds out about this, he gets angry and hops in a motorcycle before
Dresses
fighting
up like a
king
lady
in the
to
middle of
sneak
the den
in.
using only a cactus. And that's just half of the first volume. And
That's
there's
crazy.
4 volumes. Okay,
Jeez.
jokes aside, I actually loved this story, and I think it's more effective as an arc than Phantom Blood in almost every conceivable way. And it does so by standing on the shoulders
every
of the various
conceivable
characters and
way.
mechanics Phantom Blood's
Because I feel like
already
Part 1
established. And I realized this
helped us
almost immediately
focus on an
because
actual
Battle Tendency starts
villain to like
fast.
go
And
towards.
I say fast not because the scenes go by at any unreasonable pace, but because the contents of these scenes are intensely compelling. For me, there were some very easily recognizable differences with how Battle Tendency was told compared with Phantom Blood. I very much enjoyed Phantom Blood for what it was, but one thing I thought it could have done more with was scene diversity. You'll notice in Phantom Blood, outside of a scene here and there towards the beginning, the entire plot takes place in one story.
Okay, yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
in
that's
Battle
true.
Tendency,
They
the
travel to
first
different
act very
places.
much tells
Yeah.
multiple stories before converging in on one towards the second act that helped tremendously with pacing issues that often arise in that section. However, while that difference is greatly appreciated, one aspect I think almost everyone noticed that elevated the story beyond all others was Joestar.
Yeah,
Joe
he is
big.
class.
Even if you rewound the clock back to when I first saw the anime all those years ago, despite my initial time being bad, Joestar was always a bright spot in that series for me. Of the 3 JoJo's I had been introduced to during that time, he was head and shoulders better than all of the others.
Okay,
I was more receptive to him more than anyone else. Whether or
not
that
sure.
will stand
I
true
kind of
to
prefer.
JoJo's
No, actually, no.
next
I'll give him
week
that.
is
Actually,
another
yeah, he
question
is
now
more
that I'll be
interesting than
tackling the
Jotaro.
manga instead of
Jotaro is
the
very
anime.
like,
For the time being,
I'm tough and I beat things up and I'm cool.
195cm tall Joestar is a tremendously
Yeah,
engaging
Joseph
character
is
to me.
more
Similarly to
charismatic.
how
I will give
Jonathan
him
was
that. Yeah,
introduced in
yeah.
Phantom Blood, Joseph's introductory scene offers up a lot of information
With the cola
about who he
bottle.
is as a character,
Yes.
and I think this is something Araki has done
Run
phenomenally
away,
well in
Smoker.
the past as well as here. In his 2015 book, Manga in Theory and Practice, Araki spends a considerable amount of time expanding upon and delving into his process when it comes to writing a particular character, creating spreadsheets of common attributes like their
Whoa.
height, weight, and birthday, but also traits that might be a little bit more obscure, like criminal records, dreams, fears, relationship histories, and whether or not they are or are not colorblind.
Wow,
There
that's
are
a lot of
tons other
detail.
elements that go into making
Jeez.
his character spreadsheets, and this aspect of his craft in particular, I think, is something he improved upon greatly between parts 1 and 2. Personally, while I liked Jonathan's introductory scene where he intervenes with some bullies, his less important scenes thereafter felt less compelling and somewhat disconnected from the initial introduction we experienced, or at least that's how I felt. And while pivotal moments dotted throughout shared the same characteristics as the first, I think Jonathan stands in great contrast to what Araki managed to create with Joestar, his grandson, because I adored Part 2's introductory chapter concerning Joseph.
I like that it was the grandson as well, and it didn't just go straight into like the offspring of previous main character.
He fulfills another principle he preaches in his book that I love, the 4 pillars of manga structure. In his book, he describes these 4 fundamental pillars as being characters, story, setting,
and themes.
and it's his implementation of these 4 fundamentals that made this story so compelling for me to read through. He says, when creating a manga, it is incredibly important not to simply draw on a whim, but to be conscious of the 4 fundamental elements as you draw. Am I making good characters? Is my story acceptable? Am I drawing a coherent setting? Are my themes consistent and steady? And with that quote in mind, you'll notice that in Joestar's introductory scene, it takes care of all of these qualities while also helping us form a clear understanding of who Joe is as a character.
Yeah, like how he acts around people. Yeah, it's
Unlike
class.
Phantom Blood, which begins with an expository scene alongside the villain's circumstances, this part launches off the heels of Joestar's introductory chapter. The vast majority of this chapter is dedicated to him, and with great reason, as we soon will find out. Right off the bat, it's clear that the story is taking place in a time period far removed from late 19th century
Yeah, it's a
England.
very
Flashing
different
cars
world
zooming
we're in
past,
now.
Statue of Liberty piercing the sky, and a Coca-Cola vendor on the streets selling drinks from his stall. Even the clothes people are wearing, all of
So
this helps
different.
set the
Yeah, it's
scene
like
for the adventure
completely
that this
different
story
world.
enjoys. Faced with the situation of being mugged, he notices the boy who did the mugging being taken advantage of and bullied by
By
the
the
cops
police,
that catch
yeah.
him soon after the act. Instead of taking the mugging personally, Joseph can recognize when someone is in trouble and vouches for the kid before getting ticked off by the policeman and introducing us to his level of Hamon competence.
It's cool,
And with
like
this
the Hamon
brief
is
scene,
carried
we learn
on.
everything we need to know about Joseph. He's virtuous and kind, but also quick to temper. But perhaps the defining characteristic Joestar demonstrates that sets him apart from most of the others is that of his intellect. Coming up with an excuse for the young kid on
Yeah, but
the
he
fly
always
is just
knows
the
what
first
someone's going to
piece
say
of
next,
what
doesn't he?
Joseph
That's
is
his thing,
capable of
isn't it?
doing once he
Yeah.
puts his
Yeah.
mind to something. As we will soon see in almost every single fight scene that takes place after this. And what I just said there is why, for me, Joseph is a terrific main character. He drives the plot, has a terrific aura of charisma, but more than that, he's a consistent
He's so
personality.
interesting
By the end of
on
the story,
screen.
I'd spent so much time with Joseph that I honestly felt like I knew him, which, while I'm not trying to knock Jonathan, is certainly not what I can say about him personally. And this familiarity that I'm feeling as a reader can be leveraged by the author too, but more on that in a little while. Secondary characters. If there was one thing I thought JoJo's Bizarre Adventure
Caesar
lacked
was
in part
class.
1, it was interesting or compelling secondary characters.
Speedwagon
Young
was
friends
fun.
Jonathan
He
had, his
carried
father,
on.
the police, and even Zeppeli to a large extent lacked specific elements that prevented them from being compelling within the story. Though I will say Zeppeli is easily the most well-realized side character in part 1, but even in saying that, he isn't around for very long,
No,
and
he
when
isn't,
he
is he?
does pass on, it didn't really affect me in any
Didn't hit
strong or
as hard.
appreciable way. I mean, mean, if one of your three strongest supporting characters, actors Speedwagon and Zeppeli, is a dog with no speaking lines, it makes you wonder if something might be amiss here. With that said, however, secondary characters in battle tendency play a significantly larger role, with the connection I felt to those characters feeling far more potent than the story that came before.
She's so cool.
Something I think is worth noting, as I mentioned towards the beginning of this video, battle tendency is fantastic, but it is helped tremendously by legwork Phantom Blood has done to establish characters like Straits, Speedwagon, and the Zeppeli family line.
The bloodline,
all of these characters are either directly present in the story to elevate the existing main character, Joseph, or their effects are present to affect their lineage. And I think it's important to mention the side characters here because the side characters in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure actually carry most of the emotional weight from story to story, or at least early on. As far as I'm aware, given my limited exposure to the series, each new part boasts a new main character, and so when that new guy shows up and is in the process of winning us, the audience, over, we can still feel a connection to this new material despite the old main character having taken a backseat, because we still have a connection to the familiar faces we see on the sidelines.
There's still something going on. I do appreciate that with JoJo's.
Straits in the story. And so in addition to erasing the need for expository dialogue dumps explaining who all these characters are, we can instead focus on the plot, which is made all the more streamlined thanks to these individuals.
The fact that they are still there, yeah.
The pacing in this part is amazing. At no point was I even remotely bored. There's always something
going on. It's just, it is amazing.
Straits, whom we met in the very first part, for example, is still kicking around with Speedwagon. It's awesome to see familiar faces and, well, okay, sort of. It's been 50 years.
Yeah, he wasn't very integral to the story Straits, but it's still a tool that he carries it on.
Thanks to the hamon he's mastered to help him retain some of his youth. And despite him being a character that fought on the side of good prior, this character in Straits is used as the first minor antagonistic force in the story, and one for Joseph to really
carries on the whole vampire thing and reminds us of the masks.
Having gone to Mexico with Speedwagon to investigate some ruins, Straits ends up taking out everyone, including Speedwagon, seizing the opportunity to wear the mask and transform into a vampire. Returning to New York, where JoJo is to confront him, this is the first main fight of the story, and one that pits our hero against one of the main monsters from the last part. And this all takes place in the first few chapters.
It's so over the top and sick. Like, where's he get the Tommy gun from?
The fight scenes. There are two sections of fight scenes in this story, or at least two that I recognize. The pre-training arc fights and the post-training arc fights. And both are great for different reasons, so let's take a look at the pre-training arc stuff first, starting with the first major battle Joseph has in the series with the newly young and vampiric Straits. Straits versus Joseph Joestar.
Joseph Joestar.
For too long, this is probably the most perfect a first fight could be for a series like JoJo's
It's
Bizarre
ridiculous.
Adventure, but more specifically for battle tendency. Similarly to the encounter with the policeman we get with Joseph in the first chapter, this fight reinforces everything we've learned to be true and consistent with the character of Joseph in far more obvious ways. One aspect I didn't much care for beyond a few interesting set pieces in Phantom Blood was the nature of its action. While I didn't feel it was bad, I certainly didn't feel like it had any significant connection to the character of Jonathan.
Right.
If there's one thing I can't fault battle tendency for, it's failing to be memorable. Joseph pulling a Tommy gun out of thin air, throwing a grenade at him only for Straits to realize that the grenade that he threw
loads of grenades stuck in his back.
Attached to many other grenades on his back.
And he's like, ah!
Level of absurdity this story fades luxuriously in.
So over the top, it's genius.
Comedic quality that accompanies this section, along with the intrigue that's obviously there as we see Joseph learn more and more about the world he's entering into.
Run away, Smokey! Yes, Smokey! I love it.
Isn't his use of Hamlin, his physical prowess, or his personality even. Instead, it's his intellect. His ability to deconstruct problems on the fly and come up with more and more abstract solutions to
as
help
he goes on
achieve
the way,
victory
yeah.
in ludicrously absurd ways. Santana versus Joseph Joestar. I think of all the action sequences in this first half, this one was probably my favorite.
It's so
there was
weird.
a fantastic element of mystery to it, the setting being that of a secret military World War II bunker conducting experiments on the otherworldly
that thing like could just travel through the vents and stuff and absorb people.
They have anticipated, with the creature known as Santana demonstrating to us what exactly it was capable of when it took out the vampire enemy that gave our heroes so much trouble to deal with back in Phantom Blood. And it does so with ease. Elevating this scene further is a German soldier higher up from the late 1930s whose allegiance I am specifically trying to avoid saying lest I get struck down by the demonetization gods of YouTube. His name is Stroheim. And he's likable, I think. Well, at least not at
You don't want to say because of the nature of who he is, but
this experiment turned out to be, Joseph arrives in the nick of time to save the day, and, well, okay, sort of. He's there to save Speedwagon and really has no qualms with Santana initially, but eventually things elevate to a considerable degree.
It becomes a problem.
Despite the sinister elements that make up this fight, it's actually really exciting and not dark at all. In fact, it's kind of light-hearted. Pun definitely intended with that one. In essence, this fight acts as exposition done right. We learn a great deal about who the Pillar Men are, what they can do, and what's their weakness.
He is ridiculously strong though, and the way they all have to join together to try and beat him.
Tenacious play that allowed the sunlight to pour onto the weakened Santana. 1 down, 3 to go.
No, that's not how they beat him.
It's during the lead up to this section that the main groundwork.
That's not how they beat him. He hides in the shadows when they get outside, and then they trick him into jumping into the well, and then the reflection of the sun from the water killed him.
The relationship JoJo establishes with
Anyway.
Caesar is the closest thing this arc gets to compelling, emotional, and memorable character writing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
I've seen JoJo's twice.
Yeah.
The various challenges that sprout up before them. Caesar Zeppeli has a clearly defined character which is enjoyable and early on acts as a terrific foil for JoJo.
He's so
He's
funny.
tremendously adept with Hammond mastery, and so for the short term,
The way he messes with Joseph with his spaghetti and stuff. Black spaghetti covered in octopus oil.
Soon after, the fights that take place with the Pillar Men are fittingly ominous at first, insinuating the pecking order of the monsters Wham, AC/DC, and Cars.
It's Whamoo.
The 2 fights that take place concerning Caesar and JoJo versus the Pillar Men are both
He is
great
named after
in
Wham,
serving
but
the JoJo character and what sets him apart from pretty much any other qualified person in this instance. It's not his Hammond, it's his grit and intelligence, the same attributes that gave him the edge
Oh, the
in every
balls.
fight that he's taken part in. The fact that he's besting people, utilizing his unique characteristics, make us feel all the more invested and connected to what's
he hides them
transpiring on
behind his
screen.
shoulder
We
blades,
understand
doesn't
and recognize that this is the element of his personality that works for him in fights. And if this particular element to his character is overcome, we know that he doesn't really have much else up his sleeve.
the crawling away bit, and every time Whamoo turns around, he's back on the floor. Yes. Oh, it's genius.
Just a hat rack, my friend.
Ah,
One drawback
it's
to this
amazing.
encounter is that it very clearly, at least for me, is there to serve as exposition for the Pillar Men. Now, I praised the previous fight for doing it right, so what did this one do wrong?
God.
Normally, this would be fine, considering it also acts as a springboard for the story to launch into a JoJo training arc, but because the Pillar Men consistently remind us of what their motivations are through dialogue to get the ruby, to conquer the day, etc., this being reiterated over and over stood out to me at times as clunky storytelling. It's only a small thing, but it's something I thought was worth mentioning.
Yeah, like it didn't
I
need to
actually
be mentioned
liked the fact
so
that JoJo
often.
had to bluff his way out of the fight with the Pillar Men. This is a callback to the gambling contest with Caesar he shared with him in the scene before. He wanted to prove to Caesar that he was the better of the two, and right as the fight ends, despite his trachea and heart being tied up in
Oh yeah, the
poisonous
rings.
he managed to show Caesar his chops and impressed him. One other clear advantage to this particular scene is that it establishes a time limit of 30 days to defeat the Pillar Men before the poisonous rings kill
It's
him
gonna kill
and
him,
they
yeah.
achieve their goal. The training arc.
Oh, I love this with Lisa
introduces
Lisa.
JoJo to this character. Her name is Lisa Lisa, and Lisa Lisa will train JoJo by placing a mask on him to control his breathing.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
He has demonstrated in the past that he is quick to action, starts strong, and then gets tired. This will help him control his breathing. Everything that's happened before this was great, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, but I love training arcs, and now that there's a time limit, a sensei to teach him how to get stronger, and a clear goal, things started to become all the more focused, and
I love it when they're
really enjoyed that
climbing
element of it.
the big
Training
thing in the
arc,
middle.
The Hell Climb Pillar.
There you go.
The
I
Hell
love
Climb
this.
Pillar is a massive hole coated in oil, and they need to climb out of this thing using only their hands.
Come on.
And it's simple
Yeah,
and
yeah,
easy
with
to
the
understand
hands.
tasks like this that I knew would again highlight the resourcefulness and tenacity of Joseph's character. And by the way, I'm aware I'm bringing up his character consistency a lot, but really this is what the story is constantly in service of, largely with a lot of its scenes. They are designed to have Joestar bounce off the surrounding cast or environment in an effort to reinforce himself and to bring forth conflict.
Yeah.
In this particular challenge, Caesar is clearly more advanced, but
He's
once again,
definitely better
JoJo's
than
best performance
Joseph,
comes
yeah.
when he's thinking abstractly. However, Lisa Lisa put a stop to that behavior. JoJo is now in a predicament where he can't think his way out of this. He simply must think
He just
linearly
has
and
to do
overcome
it.
this hurdle the way it was designed to be overcome. I love this scene not just because of the philosophy that it employs, but also because JoJo manages to overcome this particular trial by adhering to the rules blows while also applying abstract thought to overcome
Oh yeah, the way he goes
problems that the challenge presents
around the
thereafter,
water.
leading him to completing this trial in a manner no one has performed before with the help of Caesar too. Caesar's a good boy. Okay, so
He is a good
around this
boy.
time I start to feel like there are small problems with the story, so don't hate me, okay?
Oh, excuse me.
Lisa is a cool character, but don't like that she wants to keep the Super Aya Stone safe without understanding why it's important to keep it safe. She just says it's because legend says. There are clearly understood advantages to destroying it here and now, with no known reason to keep it in her possession. It is the one thing that allows the Pillarmen to complete their plan, and I really, for the life of me, don't understand why it's important to keep it around.
I'll give him
besides
that.
to prolong the story.
I will give him
that's
that.
one bad thing. Now time to move on to something good. Jojo moves to complete his last trial and defeat Loggins, his trainer, but instead finds him dead and the Pillarmen AC/DC there. It is a fantastic fight that honestly would feel so strange in any other context, but it works so well as a JoJo fight. And might I say, making your audience anticipate a training sequence only to be met with a surprise boss battle against one of the strongest characters in the arc was a brilliant move by our
It was
author.
cool because you didn't expect it at all.
The
Yeah.
fight itself takes place on a spike-filled arena and employs some clever tactics on behalf of Joestar that honestly bordered on the line of lunacy and absurdity more than a few times. I mean, he uses a string from his hat, but also ties other string in a specific way as a decoy, all in a few split seconds that we don't see, but will see afterwards. I'm honestly not sure if I like it that much from a narrative point of view, but I'll chalk it down as a silly fight that was really fun because it was. It
It's
was a really
JoJo's.
fun fight. In this battle, Joseph finally overcomes AC/DC and wipes him out. JoJo's training is complete.
Oh, here we go.
Oh my god!
That's great. That's
Okay,
great.
So I really didn't like this specific section that follows after JoJo's fight with AC/DC. Alright, so AC/DC is, spoilers, still alive,
My
kinda,
God.
and possesses Lisa's assistant, Susie Q,
Yeah.
who then takes the redstone and ships it to Switzerland, and only after defeating AC/DC inside Susie Q does Lisa perform
Hamon hypnosis.
and reveals that it was in fact sent to Switzerland. Okay. Now, maybe I'm missing
Plot
something
convenience.
here, but that feels insufferably contrived.
Yeah.
At no point was I made aware that Hamon hypnosis could ever be a thing. Or maybe I just forgot, which is totally possible, but this, when I was reading it, hit me as an action that exists for the sole purpose of moving the plot forward
plot
and getting the
convenience.
gang
Yeah.
to Switzerland. Which, you know, it's a fine motivation for a scene, but it shouldn't be the only thing that informs it. If you want to do something like Hamon hypnosis, foreshadow it.
Yeah, show us it doing something
So the evil German
beforehand.
bad
But
guys
okay,
arrive
yeah,
at the
go on.
train to grab the package before JoJo and co, but for some reason the gang don't take it by force, despite not having any reason not to just take it from the Germans, who they have no reason to suspect are anything other than human at this point. They instead resign themselves to the idea that it's fine for the stone to be in the hands of anyone else other than the Pillarmen. And immediately in the next scene is revealed that Stroheim, the tenacious German soldier from the start, is back with cyborg enhancements and begins to school on cars once he starts attacking.
Oh,
He's
mate,
got a
that's
Gatling
sick.
gun in his sternum.
Yeah, man.
It's here I realized that JoJo and co didn't attack the soldiers because of whatever reason they said, but it's more so because they wanted to have this scene where Stroheim unveils his abilities in front of cars and not in front of JoJo.
It's a
Cars
decent
takes out
fight
Stroheim,
as well,
who
Cars and
goes flying
Stroheim.
over a cliff. JoJo and Cars dive after it, but thanks to some quick thinking on behalf of JoJo.
Oh my
and
god, I know, I thought this was
teamwork on behalf of
stupid, the
Caesar,
Hamon
the two survive
icicles
while
being
also
put
taking the
together.
stone. Thankfully, on top of now having the stone and creating distance between themselves and the Pillarmen, they now not only have the stone, they now also know where the stone was going. And thus, the hideout in Switzerland of Wham and Cars comes into focus.
Oh no.
Death.
Oh no. I'm not ready for this.
Ubiquitous consequence in storytelling these days, and sometimes it's used to great effect. With that said, in part 1 of JoJo, I didn't feel particularly attached to any one character.
Yeah.
Save for perhaps Jonathan at the very end. And even then, it certainly wasn't enough to invoke an emotional response from me in any sort of meaningful way. I cared about
No, I
Jonathan's
think it was the
dog,
fact that
but
it's Jonathan
not enough
and
to dwell
Dio.
on it for long. I couldn't care less
And as
about
they go
any
in,
of
it's
the
kind of like
legend
accepting that
fights, particularly
brotherly
Jonathan's
bond that
father.
they
And despite
didn't
Zeppeli being
really
handled
have.
with far greater care than any other supporting character up until this point.
Because Dio does seem to care a lot when he sees that he's dead.
Feel too much for him. However, I cannot say that Battle Tendency suffered that same fate. While I still didn't feel a particular connection to the vast majority of the side characters, there was one that stood head and shoulders above all the others that came before him, both in this part and the prior. Caesar Zeppeli. Unlike his grandfather, whom we saw share the screen and pages with Jonathan all those years ago happily, Caesar and Jonathan's relationship has shown one thing that most other relationships in this series have failed to recognize so far: change and development over time.
Yeah, they like did not get on at all when they first like met each other.
Zeppeli did with Jonathan in and around the halfway point. We see upon first meeting Caesar and Joseph being two brash and confident personalities who would clash on many occasions. And while I found their dynamic to be massively entertaining, it also provided a launching off point for the relationship arc to flourish. Over the course of many fights, trials, and tribulations, Jojo and Caesar always, despite their disagreements, had each other's backs.
Yeah, they helped each other out all the time.
To catch Jojo whenever he would fall. Then this happens.
Well, it's the Zeppeli bloodline curse.
Caesar! The young Caesar Zeppeli fell to the power of Wham in a hard-fought battle. The framing and paneling throughout this story has been of a high standard, but this section here in particular, it's clear there was a lot of attention given to it. The details of when Caesar fought, is slain, and ultimately discovered by Lisa and Joseph thereafter are all fittingly evocative of the emotion they wish to capture. And somewhat ironically, Jojo has spent the duration of this arc trying to better himself as a fighter, to not blindly charge into battle on some emotional whim. And while he does achieve that throughout the duration of this tale, Caesar unfortunately makes that very same mistake, and pays for it. It's a terrific scene, and it's probably, for me, the most memorable moment in all of the story, save for perhaps one moment that follows soon after. The final battle. Proceeding into the final volume of
it's also nice that Whamu kind of like recognized him as a fighter as well.
From a paneling perspective and a narrative one had me in a knot of nerves. Building to and clearly demonstrating Lisa as a master of Hammond not only created anticipation for her performance later, but it also presented the
which is
writer
a
an
bit of a
opportunity
letdown for me
Lisa's
personally.
mastery of Hammond. The entire ceiling of the building they entered is covered in vampires to defeat. This, more than any other, is Lisa's scene to steal. She negotiates the terms of the fight, demonstrates her abilities, and overall takes the reins on this occasion. She will fight Cars, and Jojo will fight Wham. Oh, also, Lisa's got like a complicated past that's linked closely with Joseph's family. She's 50, and oh look, vampire horses!
Yeah! The chariot scene!
Fun as all hell, but really the
This was so good.
It's sick, isn't it? Like, just from the beginning where he, like, just puts stuff by his wheel so he can't get going. He wears Caesar's band.
All the more clear as the last thing Caesar did before passing on was leave his remaining life force to Jojo, much like his grandpa did all those years ago for Jonathan. And if I'm being honest, this fight right here is peak Joseph Joestar. He's cunning, he's confident, and he looks damn good. Look at
He
the
looks
scarf
sexy as
and this
hell.
fight he has against Wham demonstrates
You have that
just
scarf,
that.
don't you?
I do.
Vampire fights with him so compelling to begin with. It's got some truly stunning visuals, more twists and turns than any other fight presented to us thus far, and really made Joseph feel like some sort of crazy genius.
Yes.
This is the most involved fight in the entire arc up until this point, and one that makes full use of all of Wham's established
It's the
abilities.
scenes where he has the stick and he just like sticks it in and it goes flying.
Jojo asks quietly to himself that Caesar
Fight with him.
in this outing. And Jojo, in this final fight, quite literally could not have won if not for what Caesar physically and emotionally left behind. Igniting the fire that consumes the arena, Caesar's Hachimaki envelops Wham, acting as the emotional high point and my personal favorite part of this spectacular fight, encapsulating everything I love about Jojo: its style, humor, creativity, and heart.
That actually just gave me chills.
Yeah. Fucking mad at it. Oh, but then Cars shows he's an absolute asshole.
Now Cars is about to take over the world, and there are vampires everywhere.
Oh yeah. Stroheim.
Oh, okay. Didn't expect that at all.
Ah!
I don't know how they managed to find them, seeing as everyone who knew where they were has either died or is knocked out.
Hey,
I guess Rocky
Stroheim.
didn't know either because he moves on from this scene almost immediately. Seriously, Stroheim shows up and Jojo's battle with Cars begins like 2 pages later. But who cares? Vampire
Squirrel, yeah, that was weird.
While I thought the scope of this fight was fittingly larger than all of the others, and it employed elements seldom seen in the series, like vampire animals coming out of everywhere.
Yeah, Cars was weird once he actually gets what he needed.
I enjoyed this fight with Cars nearly as much as I did the fight with Wham. For one simple reason: emotional significance.
Yeah.
The bond I recognize rise between Caesar and JoJo was far greater and, for me, acted as the emotional climax of this story. This just felt like a more extravagant second act to me. Though I did still really like it,
Those are
despite
freaking
it
cool
having
moments.
a rather contrived ending in the volcano suddenly going on. Plus, really
Yeah, but he knew.
this I do recognize the subversion in the only fight JoJo wins without his one-step-ahead type thinking is the final boss fight of the arc.
But if you're
And he
going off
loses his arc
manga
too, so
only, you are
that's nuts.
missing
So
one
in a way,
really
I can
epic
see the method behind this
moment,
madness.
and
However,
that
it
is
just
the
didn't gel
volcano
as well
sending
as the
cars
third
into
fight
the
with
air,
Matt did for me,
and
really.
us getting the
That is a
JoJo's
small nitpick in a
number
story that
1
honestly
opening
filled me
playing in the
with so
background as
much
that's
joy and
happening.
excitement from beginning to end.
I
Punctuated
personally feel that's
beautifully by
sick.
JoJo's sudden arrival at his own funeral at the very
That
end.
was funny.
There's a fantastic sense of friendship and community in this, and it really felt 100% distinct from Jonathan's story from the arc prior. In my opinion, this was a massive improvement in the right direction, and I can't wait to finally cover some material next week that I've never been exposed to before. Because, truth be told, Stardust Crusaders is a total...
Yeah. That's class. I like when he puts random funny little bits in. But I don't really have much to disagree with on that. I mean, he is doing manga only, so like there are musical parts that are missed out. Like I said, like when the volcano goes off, I thought it was just absolutely epic when the JoJo's Part 1 theme starts playing in the background as that's going off, and Cars is like, rah! It's just like,
Yeah.
and then it's the
Yeah.
one time where Joseph does the thing where he's like, because he does the whole thing the whole time, doesn't he? I know what you're going to say next, and that.
Yeah.
Cars even says, George, you planned this the whole time, and he's just like, yeah. If you say so.
Yeah.
Like the one time he didn't, it pays off. Sick, that's cool. I can't wait for him to start checking out Part 3. That's going to be interesting because he's already like seen the anime for Part 1 and Part 2 and didn't like it, so then read the manga. That's what led him to do these reviews.
Yeah.
So with Part 3, be interested to see if he actually does the anime as well. But yeah, that was decent. That was cool. Some interesting points. Bits he missed out as well, like how they actually destroyed Santana. But they'll
It might have been different in the manga.
it could have been actually. I never thought about that.
Yeah, leave a comment down below if it is.
Yeah, the thing is though, babe, I've watched the people that have watched my videos for like over a year now will know that I did a whole thing of watching anime versus manga differences, and they'll be like, oh wow, he doesn't pay attention to his videos. So
Yeah.
if that's the case, then anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already, leave comments down below, and let me know what you watch and discuss in future videos, and I'll see you guys. See all you guys next time. Bye.
So where are you up to on One Piece, Dan?
Uh,
You know, in the manga?
yeah, they're there. They're there.